Welcome to the Selling Show, where we unpack, repack, and break down exactly how top experts sell their ideas, their value, and their services. This is your host, David Newman, and you are in the right place if you want better clients, bigger deals, and higher fees. Well, ordinarily on this show, we talk about selling. That's why it's called the Selling Show. However, today, you're not going to believe this. We're going to talk about sell nothing. Sell nothing. And I have the sell nothing guy, Mr. Joe Pallo. Welcome to the show.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
So, Joe, tell us a little bit about your professional backstory. How did Joe Pallo become Joe Pallo? And what were some interesting stops along the way?
Well, I was born Joe Pallo. Let's just get that out of the way.
That makes it easy. Good first step.
Right. Yeah. A little bit of an attempt at humor there. I started selling. I paid my way through college by selling books door to door. I did not know anything about sales. Went to Charlotte, North Carolina, not even having a car. I had a bike and worked my tail off. Beginning of the summer, I was in the top 5% of the nation. Got invited back in the next 6 years. I recruited and trained students to run their own business through the Southwestern Advantage. So that's how I kind of got started, and pretty much never really got out of sales. I've sold everything from custom clothing to clinics, on-site clinics, to insurance, to consulting services. And now I'm just selling nothing.
Well, we're going to talk about that for sure. Tell us a little bit about your journey into entrepreneurship, because obviously selling for companies is different than the kind of consulting and coaching and training that you're doing today. How was that transition and how did you navigate that?
I think it came from the fact that we've all gone to these seminars and boot camps, and we check in and you get your name tag in the binder and you get these great, breakout sessions and great meetings and take all these great notes. We get all pumped up and fired up, and we're just thinking, this is going to be it. This is going to be the year. And you fly home and maybe get bumped into first class, and it's a great trip. And it's the weekend, and the kids are great. And you're just thinking, honey, or you tell my wife we can get the boat and the lake. It's going to be awesome. And we put our head on the pillow and we're ready to go. And we wake up Monday morning. We spend an hour trying to find a pair of socks that match. And we lose it. And we come into the office, and we take that binder and put it on the corner of our desk. But we've been gone for a week, so we got to put out some fires. And you spend a week putting out your fires, and then you realize, I haven't produced. So eventually that binder moves from the desk to the bookshelf on top of last year's binder. And we don't ever really apply it. So that's where I got involved with coaching and consulting, where it's a spatial repetition, where that's how we learn. And that's kind of how I started my company about 7 years ago, just helping people grow their business, either on their personal production or on the people around them, the team or their staff.
And tell us a little bit about what are all the different revenue sources, the different services that you provide to your clients today?
Primarily started out just one-on-one coaching, and that's probably my lead. But I've developed a history through my clients. I have clients worked with for 7-8 years. I worked with them long enough, we started working with their teams. I call it level up, lead up, where I'm working with the leader and then their team. That gets an exponential effect, where I do group coaching with them. And if I got the same message that the leader's saying that I'm saying, they'll listen to me more than them. So if my kids listen to my neighbor more than me about, but so that aspect. So that's versus one-on-one, then the level up, lead up. And then it's project consulting, whether it be doing work with some grant work. I'm on a couple of grants out of UW Washington, or I do some executive level leadership with nonprofits.
Beautiful. Wow. Very, very nice. So we got to dig into this whole sell nothing concept. You have a book coming out called Sell Nothing. I want to give people the full title because that's obviously the premise of the philosophy: how to sell nothing, the logical way to make the emotional sale. Talk about that, because the old sales wisdom is people buy emotionally and then they justify logically. So tell us about how you came to this realization and what the genesis of the sell nothing methodology is.
Well, it's based on the premise, and you touched on it. It's a relationship. Emotions are weird and fickle things, and they change all the time, but they cause us to act. Best way of describing how to sell nothing is, and I've coached countless people on this, but I've had a client come in, his name's Aaron, and he was doing very well. And all of a sudden he said, Joe, I'm not getting any business. I got great first meetings, but I'm not closing deals and I'm worried. And I said, well, let's talk about what's going on. And he said, well, I had a great meeting with a person. On a scale of 1 to 10, it was a 10. I mean, it's like I was in the meeting, and this is before COVID, I was in the lobby and see two people walking down the hall. One just happens to be my neighbor. The other's the client I'm going to meet, or the new person I'm going to meet. And it's a great boost in rapport. And we have a laugh at it. My neighbor says, you're not working with Pallo? Crap, Pallo's great. So it's a great start. And then we go to the meeting and we're establishing rapport. We talk about the fish in the wall. You see a picture of your buddy from 8th grade. And you talk about that Yahoo. And again, it's a great conversation. It rolls. He's laughing at your jokes. He's asking questions. He even says, can you come back in 2 weeks? I'd like to see a proposal. Scale of 1 to 10, it's a 10. 2 weeks come by, and we're salespeople. So just before the meeting, we're getting all our details ready because that's what we do. We wait. And you get a voicemail. And he says, Joe, I got a kid home sick today. Can we do it in 2 weeks? Thanks, buddy. We'll see you then. It's like, fine, all right. We'll just bump it back 2 weeks. He called me buddy. We're still friends. 2 weeks come by. Sure enough, another call. Joe, now I'm sick. Can you call me? Shoot, I'm on vacation. Can you call my admin and set up a time? And maybe it takes you a month to get back in. And this time the admin walks you down the hall, knocks on the door. He says, oh, come on, just give me a minute. I need to finish this email. And you get 30 seconds of silence. And he goes, okay, 2 things. I got called across town, so we got to cut this short. Let's see what you got. And you jump into your meeting, and it's different. It's cold. You know, like the first meeting with Norman Rockwell with a fire, really nice kind of. This is you're on a block of ice. He's not asking questions. And his arms are crossed, and he's looking at his computer. He's not laughing at your jokes, and you walk out of there with, I need to think about it. Call me in a week, or call me in a month, or call me next quarter, and you never get back in. Well, Sell Nothing deals with that piece. The problem, we think, what's going on at that second meeting? And I look at it, the problem happened to the first meeting. In sales, there's 2 things that have to happen: logical sale and emotional sale. Both are important, both are needed. The logic confirms the sale. The emotional sale makes it happen. I think of it in terms of buckets. I'm a simple guy. The logical bucket is filled with my voice. I'm the expert. I've got a marketing department behind me. I can fill that, and it's facts, and you can't argue that. The emotional bucket is filled with their voice. Now, talk about the buckets. You've got a bucket full of water. Can you put more water in it?
No, you're full.
Right. If you have someone logically sold, can you sell logic anymore?
No, you're done.
Same thing. The emotional bucket, again, filled with their voice, and emotions are weird things and they're fickle and they change all the time. It has holes in it. When I left that first meeting, I had both buckets full. I got the next step. Fast forward, when I come back 2 weeks or 2 months, logically, they're still sold. And in my example, he said, let's see what you got. I jumped in and tried to sell something that's already full. The emotional bucket, that's empty. I would have been better served saying, let's talk about that. Why was that important to you? Give me an example. And I strive never to coach, teach, train, or speak until I get people emotionally engaged. That's selling nothing. It's that emotional engagement is what I need. Did that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. You know, the way I talk about that is the dreaded disease of DPS. DPS is disappearing prospect syndrome. The other thing that you're tapping into, and I think a lot of consultants and coaches and even some professional salespeople, they fail to understand that the half-life, like think of like radiation, the half-life of a prospect's enthusiasm is literally measured in minutes and hours. It is not measured in days and weeks. So this is something where sales momentum becomes really important. So let's talk about the earning system. I know this is one of the central themes of your whole philosophy. And it's the way I look at it, if I have this right, it's like a conversation roadmap. And you have to go from point A to point B to point C. If you skip any steps, you try and shortcut the process, you're in a big hurry and you cut right to the chase, you go into presentation mode or data dump mode, you've totally lost it at the beginning. To your point of it wasn't in the second call that you screwed up, it was in the first call that you screwed up. So walk us through the earning system and let's spend a little bit of time on each step and stage.
And it's based on the premise that I have to earn the right to ask for the next step. And again, like I was saying, or I say, sales is like you have a battle plan. It all makes sense. You start the battle, throw the plan out the window. Same as a sales call. Well, the earning piece is an acronym. Each letter stands for a piece I want to cover. Some you can omit, but you can bounce around and be focused and present with the conversation rather than stay on your script, but come back to it. So the E just stands for evaluate their current reality. And most salespeople, that's the data gather, the fact finder. I mean, I look at it, if I'm going to make an apples to apples comparison, I have to ask you enough questions so I know what type of apples you have. If I'm showing you something different, apples to oranges, I still need to know what type of apples you have. I think a lot of salespeople do that piece, and that's pretty common. So that's the E, evaluate the current reality. A is, what are the advantages of their current vendor? And I get pushback on that. Like, I don't want to ask that question because I'm kind of talking them in to stay with their current advisor. And I love asking that question for a couple of reasons. Is one, I get different results and my clients get different results because we do things differently. So that's one. Me asking what you like about your current advisor, that just screams confidence. I mean, I'm not just going in the kitchen, I'm going right where it's hot. And business is given to confident people. But the third reason, when I ask what do they like about their current advisor or current vendor, they're literally telling me their hot buttons. And I'm going to need to close on that in 5 minutes or 5 weeks or 5 months. And I'm not going to know unless I ask them. That's the E and the A.
We interrupt this interview with an important announcement. If you're committed to better clients, bigger deals, and higher fees, get over to doitselling.com right now and grab a copy of my new book. That's the deal, kids. Grab a copy of the new book and then get all the bonuses, companion tools, trainings, and downloads at doitselling.com. Buy the book, get the bonuses. Buy the book, get the bonuses. Buy the book, get the bonuses. That's how it works. I'll see you over there. And now also the A, let's say they're not working with a current vendor. So obviously you're a sales consultant, sales coach. The client or the prospect might not have a current sales trainer or sales coach, but they have a current situation, and you're asking about what they like about their current situation or kind of what's working in the business right now. In other words, start with what's not broken and then figure out, hey, let's talk about what you have going on now. Talk about how talking about the current situation differs a little bit if there's no competition on the horizon versus talking about their current vendor or their current supplier if there is someone already in place.
Well, it goes to, it's the same thing, and at least my perception. It's what they like about their current situation. I've got to build off of that. That's my starting point, whether it be a current vendor or something, their current situation. We've got a lot of leads coming in. I like that. Okay, I got to trigger on that. I got to key in on that. So it's kind of a little bit flexible, whichever way you want to go. And it goes to the third letter, R. That's revise. What do you want to change? And I deliberately ask, what do they like before I ask that piece? Even though that's the major reason why they're going to go forward, I don't lead off with that. They're going to tell me. And I personally think, as busy as we are right now, if I'm sitting down talking to somebody, there's a problem there. Otherwise, I would not be there. We're too busy. We don't have that. That's the EAR, the N. Who can say no? What other decision makers do I need to get in the room? Because one of the most frustrating things in sales is me to go and give you my pitch, and you get it, and then you say, well, Joe, I got to go check with my boss and see what she thinks. I'm great. I'm going to have to come back in 2 weeks, in 2 months, or whatever, and do my dog and pony show. Or worse, you're going to sell my product for me, and you're not an expert on it. And you're going to sell me for me, and you're not an expert on it. There are some times I will literally try to back out of the conversation if I don't have the people there. Sometimes you can't, but gracefully, I will try to do that, and I want to have that person there. It's EARN. I, and this is probably the one thing that I suggest people take away is this step. Interpret back what they just said. It's huge. It just changes the whole dynamic of the conversation. I'll literally say, hey, just for clarity, can I take 2 minutes and just kind of repeat back what I heard? And I just go on a rant. And I hear things like, well, dang it, Pallo, you said it better than I did. And it's just a great spot to be in. Mentally, I'm on the same side of the table as this person is. And I haven't even started selling. They're thinking, finally, this guy gets me. Someone who listened. it's a great spot to be in. It just really changes the whole dynamic of the conversation. The second N, nothing. What if nothing changes? This establishes a sense of urgency. And that's a question that when I ask, I pretty much get a fluff answer. It's not really what I want. It's not going to get that sense of urgency. So personally, I would always ask, what else? What if nothing changes? I think it's the most underused 2 words in sales and probably the most effective. What else? And that really helps establish a sense of urgency. And then the G is just, what is the gain? If you fix this problem, you've freed up 2 hours a week, what can you do with that time? And that's a process that kind of meshes with most sales talks. You just kind of blend it right in on top of it, but it keeps us focused. But literally, well, I'll say it this way, doctors can't fix you until you tell them how or why. Makes sense. You're not going to take their prescription until you've told them what's wrong. Well, I can't sell anyone until you tell me how or why. And my second book is coming out, How to Lead No One. I take these principles, and you can't lead anyone until they tell you how or why. It's the same principles. Yeah. So that's kind of the earning system.
So let's unpack. I want to go a little bit deeper just into a couple of those areas, because I think I'm channeling our listeners and they're like, Joe, this all sounds great. And I have this problem, or I have this blockage, or sometimes this gets in the way. So let's talk about no. Who can say no to this? Who else needs to be in the room? Who else needs to be on the Zoom call? Sometimes when we reach out to a company, we're talking to maybe not the right person, maybe not the right level, maybe they're not the economic decision maker, maybe they're involved, but they're not the final person. And we find this out too late, or we find this out during this call.
Yeah.
The head trash is, well, I don't want to make this person feel less important. I don't want to feel like I'm going over their head. I don't want to diminish their status or their self-esteem. What are some graceful ways beyond backing out of the call and saying, hey, when you get the real guy, let's have another Zoom call, which of course you would never do. Talk about that hesitation, or that wanting to be liked, or wanting to be polite and not wanting to go over that person's head. How do we get that head trash reprogrammed so that we're actually doing this the right way with the right come from?
That's an objection, correct?
Yeah.
And even though we answer objections in advance, we strive to, they still come up and they still happen. But when I'm answering objections, there's a piece that I coach on, it's called weak, strongest, stronger. When I get the objection, I'm in a weak spot. I'm going to go to where they're strongest, something they've dealt with, touched, felt, experienced, take their strongest point and make my weak position stronger. So it's weak, strongest, stronger. Let's say you're an insurance agency. And I'm talking to I thought you were the person I need to talk to, find out, no, there's another partner we need to talk to. All right. So I'm in a weak spot right now. I got to go where you're strongest. And I'll just say, well, David, let me ask you a question. When you're going to quote an insurance or quote a policy to a new client, one of the things you have to do is you have to get a lot of information, correct? And you have to ask a lot of questions. You got to talk to all the key players. And it's hard to do, but that's the right way you do your business, correct? Right. And if you don't do that, if you go ahead and give them partial information, then your quote could be wrong. Or if you're not talking to the wrong person, it just doesn't make sense. So I'm talking about where they're strongest. That's insurance. That's their wheelhouse. And I'll just simply say, well, that's the same here. The reasons he just said are exactly why I'd like to come back and talk to the right people and get all the things. Let's use the rest of this time to clean up our information, get what we want, and let's get back together in a week or two and we have everybody here.
Okay, so that's great. Yeah. So that is great because you're obviously selling so you're tapping into their business and how they need complete information. They can't do a prescription before the diagnosis, et cetera, et cetera.
Yep.
All the players have to be in the room and you're simply saying, hey, I'm in the same boat. So you're reflecting some of their reality into your world and they totally would relate to that or empathize with that.
And they can't really argue against their own reasons.
Right. So talk a little bit. This is a really important point, and you use the word script just in passing. The earning framework is a framework. It is not a quote unquote script. What's your take on sales scripts? I know there's all kinds of dueling opinions out there. Some people say, hey, you're using a sales script whether you know it or not, that you're winging it is not a good option. Some other people say, oh my gosh, you have to have a script. The script is like the pre-flight checklist. You can't skip around. You got to keep the sequence and the syntax. So given the earning framework, what's your take on sales scripts, good, bad, and otherwise?
It's funny, I coach on this quite a bit. Actually, before I speak or train or teach or coach, if I'm in front of a group and I'm talking about, let's see, a sales script or a way to answer objections, I'll just ask, if any idiots, raise your hand. And I get a couple of hands because they're idiots. They raise their hand, so they're qualified. And I'll say, the reason I ask that is we're going to talk about scripts. And a lot of times people say, I feel robotic if I do a script. And I kind of challenge or push back on that and say, wait a minute, let's look at this. Look at how hard we work just to get the name, to get the referral, then make the phone call, and then set the meeting, and then go out and have your pitch. Or that's a lot of work. Only an idiot would allow themselves to be that passive at that selling situation to sound robotic. So I hope to spill it that way. And I say, if you're that person, you might be in the wrong job. If you're going to allow yourself to do that, that may not be, it's not your bad person, it's a bad role. But the script piece is critically important for me. And I work with a lot of executives at the top level. These have tons of experience, and they have a script, but they don't really realize it. It's the unconscious competence. We have rookies with us, and you go out on a sales call, and they go, damn, Joe, you're just good. How do you do that? I don't just do it. Well, they have a script, and the junior people look at them and think they're winging it, but they're not. That's another piece that I want to address on. These guys do have a script. It's just part of them. But the importance of a script does a couple of things. If I know what I'm going to say, I'm a heck of a lot more confident. Sales and business is given to confident people. If you know what you're going to say, it addresses that. Second, most people in sales are sitting here thinking, what am I going to say? What am I going to say? What am I going to say? And they're not listening. If you know what you're going to say, you can listen at a whole different level. And again, one of the biggest complaints is no one listened to me. Third reason is if you're saying the same thing, you're going to get the same results. It's a law of averages.
Yeah.
And I've done this far too often where people have a good referral script or a referral ask or a phone script. And all of a sudden they say, Joe, I'm not getting referrals. Give me your pitch. And I'm a big believer in role play. It's dorky, it's weird, but it's an incredibly effective tool. And we'll role play their ask. If they're saying the same thing, I'm going to know what to fix. I'm going to fix it right away. They say something different every time. Heck, I don't know. I don't know what works. But the fourth reason, if you're in leadership, you could have 5 salespeople selling 5 different ways. And you hire the 6th person and he goes, well, what? I do it this way. I take that piece. And it's just a mess. You can get everybody on the same script. That's right. And a script is meant to be as a baseline. You're going to go off tangent and be human with a person, but now you have something to come back to. So that's kind of my thoughts on that. I'm a big believer in scripts. Mine has not changed in 30 years.
Wow. How about that? Well, let's talk about referrals, because I know that you have one of your ninja powers, and I think this is also probably in the book, is 4 ways to ask for referrals without feeling pushy, salesy, or coming off like a jerk. And 4 kind of unique ways to ask for a referral. So can you share those with us?
Sure. The first part, when it comes to referrals, it's our thinking. We make referrals out to where they're a big deal, and they're really not. If you're getting referrals from people who you've done business with before, you've already established a level of trust. And we have to think that way. It's our thinking we have to look at and be confident. And I use a lot of silly examples. It's like I fly into town, you and I are having a cup of coffee, and I'll say, hey, my billfold's upstairs. Would you mind buying a coffee? I'll pay you back. You do it. It'd be a little bit weird, but you do it. Say we're in the same conversation. Say, hey, if you got to $100,000 like to borrow, I'll pay you back. A different level of trust.
Yeah.
So we acknowledge that. If you're doing business with somebody, you've already exceeded the level of trust where you can ask for the name of their brother, sister, or neighbor. And we have to think of it that way. The second part, as far as the referral piece, is I call it the simplified referral ask. If I'm going to ask you for referrals, I want to say, Dave, just curious. We've worked together for the last 3 years. We've taken care of this problem. We've taken care of that problem. Just want to get some feedback What are some things you like about working with me or my team? What else? Tell me more about that. And mentally, I'm having your voice fill up this bucket of those things that you like working about me. And then I just simply pivot and say, who are 3 people that appreciate those things? They've just given me the reasons on why they should give me referrals. It's hard for them not to. Second thing, or another thing with referrals, is I believe that right now, as busy as we are, a name and a number is not enough. We've both been referred to people, great referral. You leave a message and they don't call you back. So I really don't count referrals until I get what I call a silver bullet. A silver bullet is something that I know that the average Joe on the street doesn't know. And I want to draft off of their relationship with this individual onto me. And I use that on the first call. Like an example of a real silver bullet. Mark referred me to Aaron, said he's a great guy. He has the same size team. They're really growing. He's a great guy. He's not a meathead. Those are the silver bullets. And I ask that when I get the referrals. I called Aaron and said, Aaron, and this is my script. Aaron, it's Joe Pallo. We haven't actually met yet. I don't want you racking your brain trying to figure out who I am. Mark mentioned your name. He said you're not a meathead. 612-805-7576. And I hung up. 15 minutes later, Mark called me back. That's a referral with a silver bullet. It's something that allows them to call me back. And Mark became a good client. He's a good friend. I think he is a meathead. I think we are wrong, but but those are some ideas as far as referrals.
Now, you're still calling someone that has not really been prepped. So where do you draw the distinction between an introduction where maybe Aaron had a conversation with Mark first and then said, I really recommend Joe. I teed you up for an introductory call. You know, I've had some fantastic results with Joe over the last 3 years. You should talk to him. And then that's more of a connection than just, hey, here's a name and a number of a person who's not a meathead.
I've switched my thinking on that. I
Okay.
think it was when we were younger, we needed that. And actually, you look at a young financial advisor, they're even taught, hey, can you give them a call and give them a heads up? And we need that when we're younger. But right now, I don't think we need it. I mean, I don't want to sound like I'm bragging, but I'm good at what I do. I don't need that. And actually, I coach against that. Because if I'm waiting for you to make that introduction and warm up the call, I'm just taking all the ball and put it in your court. I can't do anything until you make that call. Why wait? So I'm not going to ask for that. And I'm probably going to say, no, I'll just reach out and give them a call. Do you have a set? Because we don't need it. I'm good at what I do. That silver bullet helps bridge that gap. That conversation is going to be had down the road, but I don't need it on the front end.
How about that? Very, very interesting. You know, it's funny. Earlier today, I was talking to Jeb Blunt, Sales Gravy, and he was totally dissing email. He's like, email for salespeople, gigantic waste of time. Pick up the phone. Yes, it's 2023. Yes, we've got social media, email, all kinds of crazy stuff. It's almost like the phone used to be the most crowded channel. Now the phone is the least used. Nobody calls except spammers and political campaigns and maybe your alma mater for a fundraising. You know, hey, it's our 50th high school reunion. You want to give $20? Talk about phone versus email versus LinkedIn. It sounds like you're an old school phone guy. I'd love to know why that is and how you leverage that.
You're spot on, yes. The harder you got to work for a name, the more valuable it is. So LinkedIn is easy. They're not really that valuable. You don't have any reach. And also, the phone allows you to draft off that relationship. That's what I want, that interaction. I am not an email person. I don't think I've ever written any business or did any business where it started out as an email, maybe the introductory email, but then I just use that to set up a call. I don't talk about what I do in the email because you can't.
Yeah.
And again, it goes back to selling nothing. It's a relationship. How can you get a relationship out of email?
Yeah.
It doesn't start that way. And go back. The phone can be effective because if you get the right silver bullets, that's a great message to leave. I don't even have to talk to the person. You know, odds are when I call, I'm going to go to the voicemail. But if I have enough silver bullets, I can leave 4 different messages, each one with a silver bullet. They're going to call me back. I mean, up until probably 3 months ago, I've been doing this 7 years. I didn't have a website. I didn't do any podcasts. This is my fifth or sixth podcast. My business is 100% referral based because it's a relationship. And if I have a relationship with you, I'm just going to draft and get that to the next person.
Wait. We're not just going to listen to this episode. There are downloads, there are resources, there are links, there are bonuses waiting for you on this episode's page when you go over to doitmarketing.com/podcast. That's right, doitmarketing.com/podcast. Grab the notes right under this episode. See you over there. So as far as, let's say that we have a list of target companies, right? We would love to do work with this one, this one, this one. You did your research. You kind of know that they're in the right industry, that they probably have some version of the problems that you help solve, or some version of they want the outcomes that you help to create. Talk about cold calling versus warm calling or new business development that might not come from a referral.
I'm going to sound like I'm old school, but cold calling should be done the first 3 weeks on your job and then you're done. Should never do it again.
Really?
It is having that focus that referrals, it's it. And personally, referrals are more important than the sale. That is how important that is. And that's how I shift. I don't want to call cold. I don't even coach on that anymore because why? It's too hard. It's too much noise. If I have those 4 or 5 companies that I want to work through, now I can kick in and say, okay, who else do I know? How can I get connected to reach to somebody in there? And it takes a little bit longer, but the longer you work for the name, the more valuable it is. So I'm not a cold calling person. I am not an email person for using that as a way to start my first conversation. It doesn't work. I'm a relationship salesperson.
Wow. Really, really powerful. I love the contrarian spin on so much of this. Well, Joe, as we're landing the plane here, if people were to take one overarching concept from the whole sell nothing philosophy and all the brilliance that you have in your book, what would that core concept or that core takeaway be?
It's the understanding that there are 2 sales or 2 buckets that need to be filled. And my job is to fill the logical one. I get it. The second part of my job is to get them to say what they want and why they want it. That's the emotional bucket. They're not going to go forward until they're emotionally engaged. They're not going to close.
That's great. It's like the logical bucket is the car and the emotional bucket is the gas. That car is not going to go anywhere unless the gas tank is full.
Correct.
Yeah, love that.
And then when you come back again, the gas tank may be empty the next time you talk to them. Whether
leaky bucket.
Bingo.
Yeah, that's great. So tell people, where can folks get connected and stay connected to more Joe Pallo brilliance? Where can they get the book? What resources and gifts can we share with them?
First, they can go to convertsalesfaster.com. convertsalesfaster.com. That's the earning. It's a free download that has the earning piece spelled out in there. We walk them through that piece. My website, sellnothing.co. The M, I couldn't afford the M. So it's not that.
Very nice.
Well, a Bitcoin company bought the M. So I just sellnothing.co, or feel free to shoot me an email, joe@sellnothing.co. But convertsalesfaster.com, you can even book a call with Joe on there and you'll get the free download as well.
Awesome. And all of those links will be in the show notes directly below this episode at thesellingshow.com. Well, Joe, thank you so much. This was hugely insightful. You're a rock star. I appreciate you.
Thank you. I had a blast and I appreciate your time.
And that wraps up another episode of The Selling Show. Hey, tell you what, if you like us, rate us and review us on Apple Podcasts, subscribe, tell a friend, go grab the notes and downloads and extras at thesellingshow.com. See you next time.